Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The room went silent as Mia stood there, holding the marker in her trembling hand. Around her, laughter echoed off the cold, white walls of the classroom. The air felt thick, almost heavy with judgment. Rows of students, most of them well-dressed and confident, sat back in their seats with mocking smiles tugging at their lips. Some exchanged glances, some didn't bother hiding their amusement. They didn't expect her to solve it, they expected her to fail. They expected her to break down, maybe even run out of the room humiliated. The giant calculus problem on the whiteboard wasn't just difficult, it was insane. A complicated tangle of derivatives, integrals, and limits, sprawling across the board in messy handwriting. It looked less like a question and more like a trap. Someone in the back, a boy with expensive sneakers kicked up on the desk, whispered just loud enough for everyone to hear. Bet she doesn't even know what a derivative is. A few others chuckled under their breath. No one tried to hide it. No one even tried to pretend they were giving her a fair chance. Mia tightened her grip on the marker. Her hands were sweating. Her heart was pounding so loudly she wondered if the whole room could hear it. She didn't belong here, not in this elite university, not in this advanced honors class. Not among the sons and daughters of CEOs, celebrities, and politicians. She had fought her way here through scholarships, late-night studies under dim lights, and dreams she barely dared to speak aloud. And now they were all waiting for her to fail. Even Mr. Reynolds, the strict, no-nonsense professor who prided himself on weeding out the weak, leaned back against his desk, arms crossed, saying nothing. This wasn't a random chance. This was a setup. It had started 2 weeks ago, when Mia had quietly corrected an error in Mr. Reynolds' lecture. A simple mistake, really. A miscalculated limit, but enough to earn her the wrong kind of attention. Ever since then, some students had decided she needed to be put back in her place. Today, they had decided to embarrass her. The game was simple. They would nominate a volunteer to solve a brutal problem on the board. And today, Mia was their target. As she stood there, feeling all their eyes drilling into her back, something inside her shifted. At first, it was fear, sharp, cold fear. The kind that made her stomach twist and her knees want to buckle. But then, it turned into something else. Something hotter. Fierce. Unyielding. Without a word, she turned to the board. She stared at the mess of equations, ignoring the whispering, the snickering, the almost gleeful anticipation of her failure. In her mind, she started to break the problem apart. Step by step. First, find the inner function. Then apply the chain rule. Identify where to differentiate, where to simplify. Slowly, the chaos started to form patterns. Mia lifted the marker and made her first mark. A hush fell over the room. She worked carefully, methodically, not rushing, not panicking. Every line she wrote made the problem a little smaller, a little more manageable. She could hear the occasional cough, the shuffle of papers, but otherwise, the class was frozen, watching her. Minutes passed. 10. 15. Mia moved across the board, step by step, solving what everyone thought was unsolvable. Her mind was in a different place now, somewhere calm and razor-sharp. Memories flashed through her, late nights at the public library, stacks of borrowed textbooks, solving problems until her vision blurred, her mother working double shifts so Mia could afford tutoring lessons, the quiet vow she had made to herself at 13 years old, sitting on the worn carpet of their tiny apartment. One day, I'll show them I'm more than what they see. She reached the final line of the problem. Without hesitation, she wrote down the answer. And then she underlined it. Silence. You could have heard a pin drop in that room. Mr. Reynolds stood up slowly from his desk, walked over to the board, and studied her work. The class watched, holding their breath. Mia stood still, marker dangling from her hand, heart hammering inside her chest. She braced herself for him to find a mistake, to tear her apart in front of everyone. Maybe they would laugh anyway. Maybe it wouldn't matter that she was right. Mr. Reynolds set his glasses higher on his nose and turned around. His face gave nothing away. He looked at the class and said in a low voice, "She's correct." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Someone in the back actually dropped their pen onto the floor with a sharp clatter. Mia blinked, not sure she had heard right. Correct? She was right? For a moment, no one moved. Then Mr. Reynolds did something no one had ever seen before. He nodded. An actual, genuine nod of approval, and said, "Excellent work." It felt like time restarted. A few students shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Some stared at her in shock. Some looked away, embarrassed. The boy with the sneakers sank lower in his seat. Mia didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just handed the marker back to Mr. Reynolds, walked quietly to her seat, and sat down. Her hands were still shaking, but not from fear anymore. From adrenaline. From something else she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. She glanced out the window for a moment, letting the sunlight touch her face. Maybe she didn't look like she belonged. Maybe she didn't have the fancy clothes, the expensive car, the connections. But she had something no one could fake. Strength. The class ended 10 minutes later, but Mia didn't rush out like usual. She gathered her books slowly, feeling their stares following her. Let them stare. As she stepped into the hallway, she had no idea that what had just happened wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning. Because her performance today would catch the attention of someone very important. Someone watching silently from the doorway. And her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Mia walked down the crowded hallway, her books clutched tightly against her chest. Her heart was still racing from what had just happened in the classroom. She kept her head down, ignoring the curious glances, the hurried whispers, the students nudging each other as she passed. The same people who laughed at her an hour ago now looked at her differently, but Mia knew better than to trust it. The world didn't change in a single day. People didn't either. She pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped into the crisp autumn air. The university campus stretched out before her, all golden trees, stone buildings, and manicured lawns. It was beautiful, and it had never felt more foreign. Mia started towards the library, planning to bury herself in work and forget the whole thing ever happened, when she heard a voice behind her. "Excuse me. Mia, right?" She turned slowly. A tall man in a navy blue suit stood there, smiling warmly. He looked older than the students, but younger than the professors. Somewhere in his mid-30s, with kind eyes and a confident posture. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said quickly, noticing her guarded expression. No," Mia said cautiously. She hugged her books a little tighter. He stepped forward and offered his hand. "I'm Daniel Carter. I work with the university's Special Programs Office." Special Programs? Mia had never heard of him. She shook his hand briefly, unsure. "I was sitting in on Professor Reynolds' class today," Daniel continued, his voice friendly but serious. "Your performance was extraordinary." Mia blinked. Nobody had ever used that word for her before. Ordinary, maybe. Never extraordinary. "Thanks," she said awkwardly. Daniel smiled. "I'd like to invite you to a special event. It's not public. Very few students are ever considered." Mia's mind raced. Was this real? Some kind of prank? She glanced around, half expecting the laughing group from class to jump out from behind a pillar. "What kind of event?" she asked carefully. Daniel lowered his voice. "A private academic competition. High level. The best minds from across different fields: mathematics, engineering, physics, economics. It's invitation only. Mia stared at him, stunned. Why me? She asked finally. Daniel chuckled softly. Because you did what most students in that room couldn't. You didn't just know the material, you thought under pressure, with everyone rooting against you. That's rare. Mia didn't know what to say. He handed her a small white envelope, thick and heavy. Inside, she could see a neatly folded letter. If you're interested, he said, the details are inside. First round is next Saturday. He gave her a slight nod, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Mia stood there for a long moment, the envelope in her hand feeling heavier by the second. At home that night, Mia sat at her tiny desk, staring at the envelope. Her mother moved quietly around their cramped kitchen, cooking dinner. The smell of garlic and tomatoes filled the small apartment. You okay, honey? Her mother called. Mia blinked, realizing she'd been lost in thought. Yeah, she said. Just, a lot on my mind. She didn't mention the invitation. Not yet. She didn't even know if it was real. With shaking fingers, she finally opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, printed on heavy, expensive paper. Dear Ms. Mia Brooks. We are pleased to invite you to the annual Academic Decathlon Invitational. This private event brings together a select group of the most promising minds from across the country. Participants will compete in a series of high-level challenges designed to test intelligence, creativity, and problem-solving under extreme conditions. First round, Saturday, 9 a.m. Location, Annex Building, Room 4C. Please arrive 15 minutes early. Confidentiality is expected. Sincerely. Academic Excellence Committee. Mia read the letter 3 times. It didn't make sense. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was a nobody, a scholarship kid from a broken neighborhood. Why her? And yet, she couldn't deny the spark that flared inside her. A part of her that had been silent for so long whispered. Maybe you're more than they told you you were. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. The week leading up to the competition passed in a blur. Mia threw herself into studying, spending every free hour in the library. She reviewed calculus, statistics, logic puzzles, riddles, anything she thought might give her an edge. She didn't tell anyone at school. She didn't even tell her mother. It felt too fragile, too secret, like a dream that might shatter if spoken aloud. The night before the event, Mia barely slept. She lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling of her room, heart pounding. What if it was a mistake? What if she humiliated herself? But deep down, something told her. She had come this far. She couldn't turn back now. Saturday morning dawned cold and gray. Mia dressed carefully, simple jeans, a neat sweater, her worn sneakers. She packed a notebook and a pen into her backpack and left before sunrise. The campus was eerily empty as she walked towards the annex building. She found room 4C easily, a heavy wooden door at the end of a quiet hallway. She hesitated for a moment, gathering her courage. Then she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was unlike anything she expected. Instead of desks, there were round tables spaced far apart, each with a single chair. At the front, a long table where 3 judges sat, wearing dark suits and serious expressions. About 15 other students were already seated, some looking bored, others tense. Mia recognized a few faces, students she'd seen in passing around campus. One of them, a girl with sleek blonde hair and an expensive handbag, gave Mia a once-over and smirked. Mia ignored her and found an empty table near the back. A bell rang sharply. The room fell silent. One of the judges stood. "Welcome to the Academic Decathlon Invitational," he said. His voice was deep and commanding. You are here because you have shown exceptional promise. Today, you will face challenges designed not just to test your knowledge, but your ability to think, adapt, and lead under pressure. He paused, letting the words sink in. There will be 3 rounds today. You will be evaluated not only on correct answers but also on your approach, creativity, and perseverance. Only the top 5 scorers will advance to the next stage. Mia swallowed hard. 3 rounds. Top 5. The judge continued, first round. Mathematical reasoning. You have 30 minutes. Good luck. Assistants handed out thick packets of questions. Mia opened hers and felt her stomach drop. The questions were brutal, harder than anything she had prepared for. Complex calculus, abstract algebra, probability puzzles twisted into impossible knots. For a second, panic rose up like a wave, threatening to drown her. But then she remembered the classroom. The laughter. The board. The marker in her hand. She took a deep breath. One question at a time. Mia bent her head and started to work. The minutes flew by in a blur of numbers and logic. When the judge called time, Mia barely finished the last problem. She leaned back in her chair, exhausted but strangely exhilarated. Assistants collected the packets and disappeared behind a side door. The students were left to wait, tension hanging heavy in the air. After what felt like an eternity, the side door opened and the judge returned, holding a list. He read out 5 names. Mia's heart pounded in her ears. The first name wasn't hers. Neither was the second. Then. Mia Brooks. She almost didn't believe it. She made it. She made it to the next round. As she stood to move to the next section, she felt a sharp tap on her arm. She turned. It was the blonde girl with the expensive handbag. The girl leaned in close and whispered, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Don't get too comfortable. Beginner's luck never lasts. Mia met her gaze steadily. We'll see, she said softly. She moved past her and into the next room, her heart steady now. She was just getting started. And something told her. This competition was much bigger than it seemed. There were secrets here, and Mia was about to uncover them. The second room was colder. The air felt heavier, as if it carried invisible pressure. Mia took a slow breath as she stepped inside. Around her, the 4 other contestants, all older, sharper, more confident, claimed their seats without hesitation. Mia chose a chair near the corner, giving herself a full view of the room. Unlike the first round, there were no papers, no calculators, no pens. Only a blank screen at the front and a heavy clock ticking on the wall. Something about it felt different. Dangerous, almost. The judge stepped forward again, holding a remote in his hand. This round, he announced, tests your ability to solve complex problems not with formulas, but with instinct, logic, and speed. You'll be presented with scenarios that have no clear answer. Mia's stomach twisted. You will have 90 seconds per scenario, he continued. After that, no changes will be accepted. You must trust your first instincts. He pressed a button. The screen flashed to life. Scenario 1. A burning building. 3 people trapped inside, a world-famous doctor, a young child, and a scientist on the verge of curing cancer. You have time to save only one. Who do you choose, and why? The clock started ticking loudly. Mia froze. Her mind raced, spinning through moral arguments, ethics, consequences. 30 seconds gone. Pick one, her instinct screamed. Pick. She scribbled her answer. The child. The future holds infinite possibilities. Saving innocence preserves hope. The clock buzzed. Time was up. One after another, the scenarios came, each worse than the last. A lifeboat with too many passengers. Who do you push overboard? An experiment that could save millions, but risks destroying a city. Do you continue? A friend who betrayed you, do you save them or let them fall? Each question clawed at Mia's conscience. Each forced her to look deep inside, to find answers she wasn't sure she liked. By the end of the round, her hands were trembling. She wasn't sure if she was still the same girl who had walked into this building an hour ago. When the final buzzer sounded, the judge collected their papers. You may wait outside, he said. Results will be posted in 30 minutes. Mia stood up on shaky legs and left the room with the others. Outside, a small lounge area with faded sofas and vending machines awaited them. No one spoke. The blonde girl, whose name Mia had learned was Claire, stared out the window, arms crossed, face tight with nerves. Mia sat quietly in the corner, feeling her heartbeat slowly return to normal. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady herself. But when she opened them, she noticed something strange. At the end of the hall, near the fire exit, two men in dark suits stood whispering. They wore no university badges. They didn't look like professors. Something about their posture, alert, watchful, sent a chill through Mia's spine. Were they part of the competition? Or something else? Before she could think too much, the lounge door swung open. The judge entered, holding another list. Congratulations to our finalists, he said. In no particular order, Mia Brooks, Claire Donovan, and Ethan Chen. 3 names. Mia had made it again. Relief flooded her, but so did fresh fear. The final round. The real test. And the way the judge smiled, it wasn't a kind smile. It was a challenge. Final round begins in 15 minutes, he said. Rest. You'll need it. He left them there, staring after him. Mia got up and walked towards the vending machine, pretending to be casual. But her eyes kept flicking toward the 2 men by the exit. They were still there. Still watching. She bought a bottle of water she didn't really want and leaned against the wall, thinking. This wasn't just about academics. Something else was going on here. Something much bigger. 15 minutes later, they were led into a third room. It looked like a conference room, long table, high-backed chairs, thick carpet. On the wall, a large map of the world was pinned, full of red and blue pins. A small, silver laptop sat closed at the center of the table. The judge stood at the head. For the final challenge, he said, you will work as a team. A team? Mia's heart sank. She glanced at Claire and Ethan. Neither looked thrilled either. You'll be given a global crisis scenario, the judge continued. Limited resources. Limited time. You must develop a solution together. He smiled, almost cruelly. Or fail together. He tapped the laptop. The screen lit up. Scenario: a deadly virus is spreading rapidly across 4 continents. Governments are collapsing. Resources are scarce. You have $1 million, limited medical supplies, and only a small team of workers. Design a survival plan that saves the maximum number of lives. You have 1 hour. The door clicked shut behind them. Mia stared at the screen, feeling overwhelmed. Claire immediately took charge, grabbing a marker and heading for the whiteboard. Okay, Claire said briskly. First priority, wealthy countries. Save the important ones first. Mia blinked. Important ones, she repeated. Claire rolled her eyes. Resources matter. If we waste supplies on poor, unstable countries, we lose strategic positions. Mia felt anger rise in her chest. Every life matters, she said quietly. Claire laughed. That's idealism talking. Not reality. Ethan stayed silent, looking uncomfortable. Mia took a deep breath. She knew she couldn't force Claire to change. But she could still do what she thought was right. They argued. They debated. They scribbled plans on the whiteboard, crossing them out, starting over. Mia fought to keep her voice calm, to inject compassion into a room growing colder by the minute. She suggested using funds to empower local clinics instead of building expensive hospitals. She suggested mobile teams to reach remote villages. She suggested prioritizing vulnerable populations, the elderly, the children, the sick. Every idea was met with Claire's sharp counter-arguments. Not practical. Too expensive. Too slow. But Mia refused to back down. Not this time. Not when real lives, even imaginary ones, were at stake. When the hour ended, they submitted their final plan. It was a compromise, a messy blend of cold logic and stubborn hope. The judge reviewed it silently, his face unreadable. "You may leave," he said finally. "Results will be announced tomorrow." Tomorrow? Mia's heart sank. One more night of waiting, wondering. Outside the building, the sun had already set. Mia walked alone across the empty campus, her backpack slung over one shoulder. A cool wind stirred the leaves around her feet. She had just reached the main road when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. It was Daniel, the man who had first given her the invitation. Only now, his easy smile was gone. He looked serious. Almost worried. "Mia," he said quietly. "Be careful." "What do you mean?" she asked. Daniel glanced around, then leaned in. "This competition isn't just for scholarships," he said. "There are people watching. Important people. They're looking for something." "For what?" Mia whispered. Daniel shook his head. "I can't say. Just, trust your instincts. And don't trust everyone you meet." He pressed a small card into her hand. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Mia stood frozen, clutching the card. On it, a single phrase was printed. "They are testing more than your mind." The street lamps buzzed softly as Mia stood under their pale light, clutching the small, cryptic card Daniel had given her. "They are testing more than your mind." The words felt heavier now, pulsing against her palm like a living thing. She slid the card into her jacket pocket and hurried toward the bus stop, her heart pounding faster than her footsteps. Who exactly were they? And what were they really looking for? That night, Mia lay awake in her tiny dorm room, staring at the cracked ceiling. She couldn't stop thinking about the competition. About Claire's ruthless arguments. About the men in suits by the exit. About Daniel's warning. Nothing about this felt normal anymore. Was this some secret recruitment? A psychological experiment? Was she being judged not just on her intelligence, but on her morals? Her soul? Sleep came late, heavy and uneasy. The next morning, gray clouds smothered the sky. Rain splattered the windows as Mia dressed quickly and rushed back to the competition hall. Inside, the atmosphere had changed. Gone were the bright banners and friendly smiles. The few staff members who remained wore grim faces, whispering into radios, glancing constantly at their watches. Mia spotted Claire leaning against the far wall, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Ethan stood nearby, looking even more nervous than before, his hands jammed deep into his pockets. No one spoke. It felt less like the final day of a competition, and more like a trial. The judge appeared, a clipboard in hand. "Follow me," he said shortly. "No congratulations. No ceremony. Just business." They followed him through a long hallway Mia hadn't seen before, deeper into the old university building, past locked doors and dusty portraits of forgotten scholars. At the end of the hall, they entered a small, windowless room. Inside, there was only a single table and 3 folders, one for each of them. Mia sat down slowly, feeling the walls press closer around her. The judge spoke without looking up. "You are here because you demonstrated qualities beyond academic excellence." He flipped through some papers. "We were watching not just your calculations, but your decisions. Your leadership. Your ethics." Mia exchanged a glance with Ethan, who looked even paler now. Claire just tapped her fingers impatiently against the table. "You each have been evaluated," the judge continued, "and based on our assessments, you now face a choice." He slid the folders across the table, one to each of them. "Inside, you'll find 2 offers." Mia's hands trembled slightly as she opened her folder. Inside, 2 sheets of paper. Offer 1, a full scholarship to any university of her choosing, with all expenses paid. Offer 2, an invitation to join a confidential, international program aimed at solving critical global problems, a program shrouded in secrecy, danger, and incredible responsibility. The catch? If she chose offer 2, she would have to disappear from her normal life for at least 3 years. No public acknowledgement. No contact with friends or family. Only the mission. The judge's voice cut through her racing thoughts. "You have 15 minutes to decide." 15 minutes. 15 minutes to change her entire life. Mia's mind spun. The scholarship would mean security, a guaranteed future, everything she had ever dreamed of. But the second offer. It whispered something deeper inside her. A chance to make real change. A chance to matter, not just succeed. But also a sacrifice. Isolation. Risk. She glanced at Claire. Claire's mouth curled into a confident smirk. She had already made her decision, Mia could see it. Ethan, however, looked torn, staring at his papers as if they might suddenly rearrange themselves. The judge stepped out of the room, leaving them alone with their thoughts. Tick. 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 The wall clock hammered time into their brains. Mia closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. What did she really want? Hadn't she come here just to prove she was good enough? Smart enough? But now it wasn't about proving anything. It was about choosing who she wanted to become. The girl who took the safe road, or the woman who dared to leap into the unknown. Finally, the judge returned. He collected the papers silently. Mia had signed under offer 2. So had Ethan. Claire had taken the scholarship, of course. The judge nodded slightly, almost as if he had expected this. "Those who accepted offer 2, he said, follow me." Claire gave a small, mocking wave as Mia and Ethan stood to leave. "You're crazy," she whispered as Mia passed by. "Good luck being someone's lab rat." Mia didn't answer. Because deep inside, she knew, Claire would never understand. The judge led them down another hallway, deeper still into the building's hidden guts. They reached a metal door, heavily bolted and marked simply, "Authorized personnel only." He punched a code into a keypad. The door hissed open. Inside was a small underground garage. 2 black SUVs waited, engines quietly running. 2 of the suited men Mia had seen before stood beside them. Without a word, they motioned for Mia and Ethan to get in. The ride was long and silent. Rain streaked the dark windows. Mia tried to memorize the streets, the turns, but soon they were far beyond the city, into dense woods and winding roads. Finally, they reached a fenced compound surrounded by towering pine trees. Barbed wire glinted along the top. Guards patrolled with dogs. Whatever this place was, it wasn't a school. It was a fortress. Inside, the compound was surprisingly simple. Bare walls, long hallways, stark fluorescent lighting. They were led to a small briefing room where a tall woman in a navy suit waited. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her face. "Welcome," she said, her voice crisp. "My name is Director Lang." She nodded toward a projector screen behind her. "You have been selected for Project Helix." Project Helix. The name sent a ripple of energy through the room. Director Lang continued. "You were not chosen because of your grades. Or your test scores. You were chosen because you demonstrated adaptability, morality, and resilience under pressure." She clicked a button. A series of images flashed on the screen: disasters, riots, disease outbreaks, wars. "Humanity is facing critical threats," she said. "Climate collapse. Bioengineering risks. Rogue technology. Political instability." Her voice hardened. "Governments are too slow. Corporations too selfish. Project Helix acts where others hesitate." Mia felt a chill run through her. This was bigger than she had imagined. So much bigger. Director Lang laid it out bluntly. They would be trained. Tested further. Pushed to their limits. If they succeeded, they would be sent into the world, anonymously, to intervene where others couldn't. Saving lives. Preventing disasters. Changing the course of history, quietly and invisibly. Some people were worth fighting for. Even if no one else ever knew. Somewhere deep in the compound, a door opened softly. Two men in suits spoke in low voices. "She's the one," said the first man. "High resilience. Exceptional moral compass." "And the others?" asked the second. The first man shrugged. "Time will tell." They closed the door behind them, leaving the hallway empty and silent once again. Only the faint echo of their words remained. The cold morning air bit into Mia's skin as she stood in the courtyard of the compound. A sharp whistle cut through the mist. Director Lang stood on the concrete steps, a clipboard in hand, her gaze as unyielding as stone. "Training begins now," she barked. Around Mia, about a dozen other recruits stood stiffly, sleep still clinging to their eyes. Ethan was among them, looking more terrified than determined. A large digital clock on the courtyard wall flashed 5 o'clock. Mia shivered. Not from the cold, but from the heavy feeling settling in her gut. This wasn't going to be anything like school. This was survival. The first week was a blur of pain. They ran miles every morning, boots pounding the frozen earth. They crawled through mud, climbed walls slick with rain, fought hand to hand until their bodies ached and bruised. Instructors shouted, cursed, demanded more. When they thought they had given everything, the instructors demanded twice as much. It wasn't just physical. They were pushed mentally, too. Complex logic puzzles under extreme time pressure. Simulations where one mistake could mean lives lost. Moral dilemmas designed to tear apart their instincts. Save one child or save 5 strangers. Lie to protect a friend or tell the truth and destroy them. There were no easy answers. No right choices. Only consequences. Mia quickly learned that strength wasn't about muscles. It was about endurance. Holding on when your legs burned, when your lungs screamed, when your heart whispered, give up. Every night, she collapsed into her bunk too exhausted to think. Sometimes she cried silently into her pillow, biting her fist to muffle the sound. Sometimes she stared at the ceiling, wondering if she was losing herself, or finding the real version hidden underneath. And every morning, she rose again. Not everyone made it. On the 4th day, a boy named Sam collapsed during a drill. The medics rushed him away, and he never returned. On the 6th day, a girl named Priya quit during a grueling decision-making test. She stood up, tears streaming down her face, and said, "I can't. I'm sorry. Director Lang simply nodded. 2 guards escorted Priya out. No farewell. No judgment. Just gone. Each loss left a silence heavier than words. One night, after a particularly brutal endurance test, Mia sat beside Ethan on a cracked bench outside the dorms. Ethan looked worse for wear. A bandage on his temple, blood crusted along his knuckles. You ever wonder if we made a mistake? He asked quietly, staring into the dark woods beyond the fence. Mia hesitated. Every day, she admitted. But, she added, her voice firmer now, what if we didn't? Ethan gave a tired smile. Hope you're right, he said, leaning his head back against the cold metal wall. Mia watched the stars overhead, tiny and indifferent. For the first time, she realized. Real strength wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was surviving when no one was watching. The second week introduced something new. The gauntlet. Director Lang explained it coldly. You will face a series of missions designed to simulate real-world crises. She paced slowly in front of them. Each mission will test your ability to think, adapt, and survive under pressure. She paused, letting her gaze sweep over them. Failure is not an option. The phrase was terrifyingly vague. Their first mission came at 3 a.m. An alarm screamed through the dorms. Mia jolted awake, heart hammering, and scrambled to throw on her boots. Outside, trucks waited. The recruits were bundled into the vehicles, blindfolded, and driven for what felt like hours. When the blindfolds were removed, Mia found herself standing in a fake village, a training facility designed to look like a war-torn town. Smoke curled from broken windows. Distant gunfire echoed through speakers. Director Lang's voice crackled through a loudspeaker. Your objective, rescue the hostage. Avoid civilian casualties. Complete the mission within 1 hour. The clock started ticking. Mia's team huddled behind a crumbling wall. There were 6 of them, including Ethan. No instructors. No help. Only a rough map, 2 radios, and their wits. Immediately, arguments broke out. We need to go in hard and fast, said Jordan, a hot-headed recruit. No, argued Amara, a quieter girl. We need to scout first. Mia's head spun. Every second lost could mean the hostage's life. Finally, she spoke up. Split into 2 teams, she said firmly. 1 team distracts. 1 team rescues. They hesitated. Then, to her surprise, they listened. Mia and Ethan crept through the shadows toward the hostage location marked on the map. They could hear the enemy patrols, actors, but playing their roles aggressively, shouting and searching. One wrong move and it was over. They reached the hostage, a mannequin tied to a chair inside a fake warehouse. Mia whispered, "Cover me," and slipped inside. Her hands fumbled with the knots. Suddenly, a shout rang out behind them. Ethan fired his training weapon, a bright paintball round splattering against an enemy actor's chest. "Go!" Ethan screamed. Mia grabbed the mannequin and bolted. They sprinted through the debris, heart in throat, bullets of paint whizzing past. They made it. Barely. As they tumbled behind the extraction point barriers, a loud buzzer sounded. Mission complete. Mia collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air, the mannequin still clutched in her arms. Director Lang's voice rang out. Objective achieved. Casualties, 0. Mission, success. A rare flicker of approval passed through her tone. Mia felt something strange bloom inside her. Not pride. Not relief. Purpose. Real, raw, undeniable purpose. The missions grew harder after that. They faced chemical disaster simulations. Hostage negotiations. Technology hacks. One mission forced them to choose between saving a group of strangers or a single child. The choices haunted them. Ethan broke down once, after a mission where they lost a simulated city to a biohazard attack. He sat alone for hours afterward, head in his hands. Mia sat quietly beside him, offering no words. Some wounds didn't need words. Just presence. On the 15th day, something shifted. Director Lang gathered the remaining recruits, only 7 of them now. "You have survived the gauntlet," she said. Her voice was almost respectful. "But this is just the beginning." Behind her, 2 men rolled in a covered cart. Director Lang pulled back the cloth to reveal 7 sealed envelopes. Each one stamped with a red emblem, a DNA helix surrounded by a circle of stars. "You are being assigned your first real-world missions." Gasps broke out. Real missions? Already? Mia's stomach twisted. Was she ready? Director Lang began calling names, handing out the envelopes. When Mia's name was called, she stepped forward on trembling legs. The envelope felt heavier than it should. Inside, she knew, was not just a piece of paper. It was the next chapter of her life. The next test. The next battle. That night, back in her bunk, Mia stared at the unopened envelope. Her fingers traced the seal. Part of her wanted to run. To hide. To tear it up and pretend she had never heard of Project Helix. But a louder part of her, the part that had stood against Claire's mockery, that had survived the gauntlet, that had chosen courage over comfort. That part reached for the envelope. She broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and 4 words, simple, terrifying: trust no one. Deliver. Below it, a location. A time.no further instructions.no explanation. Mia's hands trembled. Whatever this mission was, she would be alone, completely, utterly alone. As she lay in the dark, Mia realized something. Her real test hadn't even begun. Everything so far, the lectures, the puzzles, the training, even the gauntlet. It had all been preparation. Now, the real world awaited. Where mistakes didn't mean lost points on a scoreboard, they meant lives. Or worse. Outside, the wind howled across the compound. Inside, Mia closed her eyes and whispered to herself. "I chose this. I'm ready." And deep inside her chest, where fear and hope battled for space, a small flame burned steady and strong. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew one thing. She would not quit, she would not break, she would survive. And no matter what the city looked. Different at night. Colder. Sharper. As if the streets themselves were holding their breath. Mia pulled the hood of her jacket tighter around her face, feeling the cold bite at her cheeks. She stood on the rooftop of a crumbling building, overlooking the meeting point written in her envelope. A dark alleyway. A single flickering streetlight. No signs. No names, just a time. 02:00 a.m., her watch showed 01:57.3 minutes. Her heart pounded against her ribs, every instinct screaming at her to run, to hide, but she stayed. She was here now. There was no going back. The final instructions had been simple: trust no one. Deliver. But deliver what? She had no package. No briefcase. Nothing. The only thing she carried was a small silver coin she had found taped inside the envelope. Plain. Unmarked. Except for one tiny engraving, she didn't know what it meant. But she had a sinking feeling that tonight, she would find out. At exactly 2 o'clock, a black car pulled into the alleyway. The engine idled. The driver didn't get out. Instead, the back window rolled down just a crack. A man's voice, cold and businesslike, drifted out. Password. Mia hesitated, her mind racing. She hadn't been given a password. Panic started to rise in her throat. Had she missed something? Was this a test? Suddenly, she remembered the coin. The strange symbols. Maybe. She stepped closer and said, clearly. Delta. Sigma. Phi. There was a long, terrible silence. Then the back door clicked open. Get in, the voice said. The interior of the car was dim, the windows tinted black. Mia slid in, tense, every muscle ready to bolt if she had to. The man in the back seat was older, wearing a suit that looked expensive but plain. His eyes, however, were not plain at all. They were sharp. Calculating. Predatory. Like a hawk sizing up a mouse. You're the delivery? He asked. Mia nodded, though she didn't fully understand. He held out his hand. The coin, he said, slowly. Mia placed the silver coin into his palm. He studied it under a small flashlight, then nodded once. Good. You passed. Passed? Before Mia could ask what he meant, he slipped something into her jacket pocket. A USB drive. New instructions, he said. Do not open it. Take it to the location written on the back. Mia swallowed hard. Where is it? You'll find it. Or you won't. With that, he opened the door on her side. The message was clear, get out. Back on the street, the car sped away, its tires hissing on the wet asphalt. Mia stood there for a moment, stunned, before reaching into her pocket. The USB was small, black, unmarked. On its side, barely visible in the streetlight, was a handwritten address. 1529 Ellsworth Avenue. Storage Unit 47. She memorized it quickly and tucked the USB back into her pocket. No phone. No backup, just her, and the night. Finding the storage facility was harder than she thought. Ellsworth Avenue wasn't in the nice part of town. It was in the industrial zone. Abandoned factories, graffiti-covered warehouses, stray dogs roaming the streets. The only sound was the distant rumble of trains. It took her over an hour of walking, slipping through shadows, avoiding the few people she saw. Finally, she spotted it. A rusted sign swinging on chains. Ellsworth Storage, Private Units. The place looked deserted. Perfect. And terrifying. Unit 47 was near the back. Mia found it after weaving between long rows of metal doors. It was locked with a simple padlock. Or rather, it had been. Now, the lock lay broken on the ground. Someone had gotten here first. Every hair on Mia's neck stood on end. Was it a trap? Was she already too late? Hands trembling, she pulled open the heavy door. Inside, the unit was dark except for a single hanging bulb swaying slightly. And there, in the center, was a small metal box. About the size of a shoebox. It had the same Delta Sigma Phi symbol etched into the lid. This was it. This was the delivery. Mia approached cautiously, every step echoing in the silence. She reached out. And the door behind her slammed shut. She whirled around, heart leaping into her throat. A figure stood there. Not the man from the car, someone else, younger. Lean. Dressed all in black. A pistol gleamed in his hand. Step away from the box, he said, voice flat. Mia froze. The pistol wasn't a training weapon. It was real, very real. She raised her hand slightly. I'm just here to deliver, she said, trying to keep her voice calm. He laughed humorlessly. Yeah? Deliver what? Your own funeral. He stepped closer, gun steady. Mia's mind raced. No backup. No way out, only one option, think. Fast, she noticed his stance. Casual, cocky, but sloppy. His finger wasn't fully on the trigger yet. He was bluffing, trying to intimidate, good if she moved fast enough. Her brain calculated the angle, the distance, just like calculus. Just like that day in school, standing at the blackboard, the numbers were different now. The stakes were life or death. But the method was the same: input, process, solution. She shifted her weight subtly, the man noticed. "Don't even think about it," he warned, stepping even closer. Mia smiled, not fearfully, coolly. "You think you're in control," she said softly. "For now," he sneered, now. She dropped to the ground in a split second, sweeping her leg out. The man's feet went out from under him. The gun clattered away. Mia scrambled forward, slamming her elbow into his throat. He gagged, trying to reach for the gun. Mia kicked it away into the shadows. She pinned him, adrenaline surging. "Who sent you?" she demanded. He just laughed hoarsely. "You think you're winning?" he gasped. "You're just another pawn." Before Mia could react, he slammed his head forward, breaking free. He staggered up and fled into the darkness, disappearing before she could stop him. Mia stood there, chest heaving. She was shaking, from fear, from adrenaline, from the shock of surviving. But she had survived. Again. She turned back to the box. Whatever was inside, it was important enough to kill for. She needed to move. Now. Grabbing the box, Mia slipped out of the storage unit and back into the night. She ran, not stopping, not looking back. Only when she reached the edge of the industrial zone did she finally slow down. Breathing hard, she ducked into an abandoned diner. The place was filthy, windows smashed, booths ripped apart. But it offered shelter. She set the box on a dusty table and stared at it. Should she open it? Every instinct said no. But her mind, sharp, calculating, said yes. Knowledge was survival. She pried open the lid. Inside was a single manila folder. And inside the folder, photographs, documents, maps and names she recognized: politicians, CEOs, scientists, people whose faces she had seen on TV, whose names she had read in textbooks. But here they were connected to things no one was supposed to know. Illegal experiments, secret deals, hidden atrocities. A hidden network pulling the strings behind the scenes. Project Helix wasn't just a training program. It was a recruitment system. Finding people like Mia, brilliant, overlooked, underestimated, and turning them into instruments. Instruments to protect, or to control. And Mia had just been pulled into the center of it. Suddenly, it all clicked. The calculus problem. The ridicule. The humiliation. It had all been a spark. They had been watching, testing, preparing. And now, she had a choice. Stay silent, play along, survive within the system. Or expose everything, blow the whole network apart, risk everything: her life, her freedom, her future. Mia closed her eyes, the weight of the decision crushing her. She thought of Claire's mocking laughter. Of Ethan's battered hope. Of Priya's broken spirit. And she thought of herself. The girl who had once been mocked for daring to be different. The girl who had refused to break. Slowly, she opened her eyes. And made her choice. The next morning, headlines exploded across the world. Whistleblower exposes global conspiracy, shocking ties revealed. Anonymous sources. Leaked documents. Untraceable releases. Mia made sure of that. She didn't want fame. She didn't want power. She just wanted truth. And freedom. Not just for herself. For everyone who had ever been mocked, crushed, forgotten. Somewhere, deep inside the shadows, the people behind Project Helix would be searching for her. But Mia wasn't afraid. She was ready. She had solved the final equation. And this time, the answer wasn't numbers. It was courage. It was truth. It was change.